Okay, so now you're going to set up a development environment. And as I said on attendance, you have two choices, right? And hopefully by now and I would say just select, if you're not sure, probably CodeSpace is a good way to go. Now I want to describe to you what I've done here because when you first look at this, it can maybe feel a little overwhelming, but don't let it be because it's really just based on the option you choose. You have a few other steps that you need to complete. So for both CodeSpace and local, and I've given a link here, is you have to do this step one. And this is way important because you can't, until you've, by the way, accepted the invite that I talked about on both welcome and attendance, until you do, you know, submit your GitHub username and then accept the invite, you can't do this step. So that's way important. Now, if for some reason, and I've given you the link here to the GitHub organization, so if I said, hey, I invited you, but you didn't see the link, then that's here. But I think I talk about that here, so I don't want to go over it too much. But in this case, you need to follow everyone needs to follow this first step, which is to set up your repos. Now, the thing I'm going to tell you is the videos, for the most part, are actually created for my JavaScript file, or sorry, my JavaScript course. So don't let that throw you off. Like I can already see this in the video. It says CIT93. It's the same process for CIT85 that you're in. It's just that because all students that take my classes have to do this setup, I just have recorded it for 893, but it's the same for all of my courses for you in 85. Okay, so first you do that. Now, if you've chosen local, then you're going to install some software. You're going to clone the repos. You're going to configure. Okay, now in this case, then you do the Git workflow, which is where you learn how to use Git. So interesting though, if we look at CodeSpace, you don't have these three steps. You only have one step, which is create CodeSpace. So in a sense, you can already see it's a little more straightforward, okay? But again, depending on your goals, where you're at, if you have good internet, right? These are choices that you're going to make. And if you do choose local and you're using Chromebooks, unless you're using one that you understand how to use what's called containers and a Linux and subsystem, unless you're used to that, I wouldn't recommend that. I would just recommend going with CodeSpace. For Mac and Windows and Linux, if you're just a pure Linux user, good on you for that. And then you can install local. This install works for all three of those. I demonstrate it using Windows, although my primary system that I use is a Mac. But in the install of the Git and the VS Code, I actually show or give some instruction for how to use it on a Mac. But just to show you a visual, like right now I have in my browser, I have GitHub open for the repos that I created for this course. And then the other tab is actually after I've gone through and created my code space. This is what my code space looks like. And it's just VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code in the browser. Okay. And now I'm going to bring up now my local. Like if I minimize this, behind it now is in locally installed. Now, how do I know this is locally installed? Well, if I come down here, I have VS Code here, and I can bring that up, and then I can open. And in this case, I have you create what's called a base folder, but this is all local. I don't need anything from the internet, although most of the instruction is out there, so I'll need it at some point in the class, but I just wanted to show you. I'm not sure why that didn't go. Oh, because it was minimized. So they're basically the same, except one's in a browser and one's local. It's all VS Code. This is VS Code in the browser. This is VS Code local, okay? But again, to do it local, you have to do a couple other steps, which are good to know. Now, they both have a workflow and a Git workflow, and the Git workflows are almost identical, but I ended up recording two videos because there was something specific. As an example, when you set up your repos, and now I'm on GitHub, okay? When you're on GitHub, you should see the two repos that you've set up. And when you're on local, you'll end up creating a folder, and you can see I did it here, CIT85SP25, and then I have cloned in there. But on the code space, you'll end up setting up a different code space for each of your repos. Okay, so just FYI, it's really however you want, or just I want you to understand that that is a difference in the way they're done. But once you get to the workflow, they're pretty much the same. But like I said, I did show those differences in there. Now, before I release you and say, okay, get started, do what you need to complete on GitHub, the thing I want you to understand now is that once you set up either your code space or your local, you do not change anything out on GitHub. Like if I was to come in here and I was like, oh, you know what, I need to modify or add something, you can do it. You just will create issues for yourself you don't want to have to deal with, called conflicts, okay? Because from here on out, you only change things on whichever environment you're going to work, and then you learn the Git workflow, and these are the commands that you learn in order to push your code, or in this case, have your code available on GitHub, because GitHub is where you turn it in. Because I can't see your code space and I can't see your development environment local, but I can see GitHub. Okay, so just kind of have that in your context, or your context window, your thinking window as you're going through this. And don't let this list of all these things, overwhelm you. It's really not that bad. I've had many students over many semesters get through this with no issue. But again, if you need help, the sooner you reach out, the better. And now the last thing you're going to do, which is I show you how to actually submit, because you're going to create something, one additional step, and then you're going to submit. And I will have a video just to show you that part as well. Okay, time to get started. Remember, inbox, Discord, or Zach, we are here to help you.